How's everybody doing this week? I hope everybody's doing well. I'm glad you guys have been enjoying this podcast so far. We've got a great guest today. A good friend of the show, has been on before with some previous projects he's been on with, but he's now doing some solo work, and it's amazing stuff. So I'm very excited, very happy to have Adam Araque on today. He's a great dude, a lot of fun to hang out with, when we've played shows together and stuff. And great conversation. We're kind of all over the place, though, I'll warn you. When we get going, we just kind of like go from one thing to the next. So it's kind of all over the place. But it was a great conversation, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Thanks again for giving us a chance again. And I want to thank Adam again for coming on and doing this. So hope you guys enjoy this conversation that I have with Adam. Man, it has been forever since I've actually talked with you like this, or like at all. Like, it feels like it's been ages
since I've really done a lot of things music related. This year I've been able to even just I had one song recorded earlier at the beginning of this year, and I got that music video filmed. And then, obviously, I guess, it's not that it's an elephant in the room, but it's kind of the catalyst, I think, for me just kind of taking a break back from everything. But with my dad passing, I kind of just took a back seat, and I just decided that I wasn't going to focus on music if I didn't feel like doing that right now. And I would rather just spend time with my friends and family.
Rightfully so. Rightfully so.
A great summer with them, and I did all of that.
It seemed like it. I obviously, we're connected through social media and shit. So I see your stuff all the time, and I was like, man, he's having a hot boy summer for sure.
I had the hottest hot boy summer I could possibly have with my best friends in the world.
I was like, he looks like he's having a great time this year.
It was great. I mean, I got to go to Florida and just see a bunch of family I hadn't seen in forever. We all stayed in an Airbnb for a week that they kind of all paid for the grandchildren to stay in. So, I mean, we were all just grateful for that. And I even got to meet I had only met him once when I was 10, but my cousin, who I've had a gay cousin this entire time, which is very rare for my dad's side of the family, I feel like. So it was the fact that he even exists, we were like, we have to go out to a gay bar in Orlando when we were down there. And that's what we did. And my little sister got kicked out because
I was gonna say, it's funny because I was just thinking about this before we got on this call. I was thinking the last time that you came on the podcast when you were still a part of Lizards and everything, when that was all going on, that you came on for that
last time I was here.
The last time you were on this podcast was when you were with Lizards, and you had just come out, right?
Jesus Christ.
Literally right before that. And I remember I talked to you a little bit about it right before we went on, and I was like, I don't know. I mean, obviously you're just now starting to talk about this. And I don't want to prod or anything. Is it something you want to talk about? Is it something you don't want to talk about? And you were just like, no, dude, whatever. And I think it might have gotten slightly touched on, in the midst of all the chaos that was that interview. But I was literally just thinking about that before I got you on here. I was like, man, when the last time I had you on this was then, which 3 years ago. 3-4 years ago.
I mean, you can have me on a podcast now. They'll ask me about it, and I'll just be like, yeah, I think it's cool.
Well, and it's not an issue at all. It was just funny because it was it had just happened. Literally, I think you had made the post days before you came out to the literally came out to the studio, and I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to do with this? Am I supposed to touch on it? Am I not supposed to touch on it? Like,
No,
I'm like,
talk
as your
about it.
friend, I'm like, you know, I
Talk
want to respect
about
whatever
it.
you wanted to do. Like,
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do remember that. No, absolutely, talk about it.
well, I love it. I
Talk about
honestly
hot button topics
like, I love the fact that, like, since
that
you
I know
have
about.
like since though you came out and everything, it has been an absolute joy to watch you like just bloom, like absolutely, like in so
Yeah.
many different ways.
I've
Like
just been a social butterfly. I feel like that was the point in my life where I was like, I'm way too fucking old for this. I was like, why am I hiding this? I was like, who is stopping me anymore besides myself? I was like, you're literally one of the most powerful people if you can find that in yourself, you know?
100%.
And so, yeah, I just was like, period, sis. And then everyone was like, slay.
Yeah, I
yeah.
loved like I remember when I saw, like, first off, I mean, when I saw the post, I was like, oh, okay. Like it made sense, didn't phase me at all. And then I saw like the responses that everybody gave you was just, I mean, I was
so
seeing
overwhelming.
just hundreds of hearts and love, and like just everybody was like pouring out to you. Like it was like, I was like, this is like the most beautiful thing. And it was so much like, it was all so much of it was like, it was so much of like that scene, like that all of us were a part of that family. Like, like everybody was just like, this is awesome, we fucking love you, dude. Like this
wouldn't that be strange?
Like,
wouldn't that be strange if one person was just like, fuck you?
Right. I think well, I honestly though, you know what would have happened if one
I think they would have got cyberbullied. I like yes. and like I think they would have got banned in the Shadow Realm.
They would have deleted all of their social media stuff within hours.
That's the thing. If anyone disagreed, they didn't comment. That's not their place to do that.
No. And I was just very happy to see the response to, like, I was like, oh, this scene, this family that has been created here, like everybody's really cool. Like everybody's, you know, everybody looks out for each other.
Like the music scene around Indiana has always been just like really fucking nice to just about anyone I've been around.
Yeah, so. I mean, you have your occasional assholes and or people that are trying to, you know, grasp.
Yeah, but like who's talking about here anymore, you know?
Yeah, I mean, no, not really. Not money.
Exactly. No, they faded themselves out.
Yeah. But since you started doing solo stuff, like I have loved every second of it. Like,
thank you.
I mean, hell, I even did that fucking drum cover earlier this year.
Yeah, you did. That was so sweet.
And like, it's because it got stuck in my head, dude. It was like literally just looping on repeat in my head. And I was at the time, I was doing like these drum cover videos for fun at the time. And I was trying to think of what song I wanted to do. And I had a couple of them like in mind. And then, but I just could not get that song out of my head. And I was like, fuck it, I'll just do it. And so I did it and was like,
okay.
It helped like being like, because I was always just like, always looping through my head, like every day. And I'm just like, man, I got it.
I was like posted like a half-assed, like 10-second cover of one of We Love You songs on my guitar. And it was just like on my story or something, I think. It was either that or like Instagram. Don't remember it. It was that one. It was like a single. Why can't I think of it? We're finding it right now.
Oh, I don't remember. I saw you post something.
Wow. Okay, Wi-Fi. Rude. It was like 2 years ago. I don't know. It's always been stuck in my head, regardless of me not knowing what the song was again. Edge Vacation, that's what it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just like, it was weird because it was, you know, up to that point, I had just been doing drum covers of like songs that were, or artists that were kind of influential on me as a teenager or whatever, growing up, like me playing drums, you know, because I started out as a drummer as a kid and then moved to other instruments as I got older. But like, that was like where it kind of veered off from that, but it was like, you know, it still fits because it's like, here's somebody that I'm inspired by currently. Like, you know,
shit.
somebody, you know.
Well, thank
like,
you. That means a lot. You know, I try to. I don't know. I wanna make music that's like my own, but I also want it to be like an earworm. You know.
Oh, it absolutely is. Like, and even
I
just
like
before you
catchy
got
shit.
on, I was kind of like listening back through your catalog right now, like as I was getting things ready, and I kept listening, and I'm just like, man, this shit is so fucking good, dude. Like it's so good. Like,
Oh, I couldn't have done it without Caleb Lewis either. That guy.
he is definitely a production
Whenever
genius.
I get him to like record something, he's a workhorse, and he just like I can sometimes tell he might get a little annoyed if I have a million changes I want to make to a song. So I will message him back, and I'll be like, it'll get down to the tiniest little fucking things. It's like of just like, can you literally like just turn like this symbol up like just dick hair, you know? And he'll do it.
That's how it works, though. That's how it is as an artist, though. I think we even kind of talked about that when you were on with Lizards, because you guys were working on, you just released that second EP, and it was before you had started working on what became the full length later. But like, well, full length ish, split, whatever, you know. But
because what was the last thing we like released when I was in that band? It might have just I recorded the EP that they released with them, and then that got released like months, maybe a year later.
Yeah, it was like a year later. Like you had, it was before you had started recording that. It was
they might still have shit they're sitting on.
Probably. I mean, knowing Joey, like probably.
If they have it in the like archives, I think they were talking about releasing a song recently that like might have had my involvement on it, but I don't know.
But it was like, even back then we were talking about how, like, you know, as artists, when you're recording, like you get really nitpicky about stuff, and like there comes a point where you just have to kind of let it go. And you know, it's not if you don't just let it go and let it be what it is, you'll nitpick it forever and you'll never release it. Like, because you'll always find something you don't like.
It's like, what are you doing? Like, just like move on. Like, there's other things. And like the thing about the music I make always, I feel, is that I'm always trying to make something that I liked better than the last thing I made.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and it's really just all about how I feel about it at the end of the day, really. I mean, and so I just make sure that whatever I release, I'm like, this is an improvement from what I did last, you know, because I still feel like I'm growing as like an artist myself, very much so.
Well, I think that's kind of a good sign for any artist. Is like, we never really feel like we're fully, like, we've never reached it. You know, it's like you never feel like you're there. And it's funny because like you can look back at like your catalog of things that you've done, and you can go like, oh God, that stuff back then was cringe. It was so bad. And then, you know, compared to what you're doing now. But what's funny is, like, I was just listening to a podcast the other day. They were, you know, it was an artist who was talking about like how one of their, you know, cult classic albums that came out in like the late 90s that all the fans love, basically every member of that band hates, because they never felt like they reached what they wanted to do with it. But it became like one of their most popular albums, and it like never made sense to them how it was like, this album we always felt like was not finished. There was so much stuff that could have been way better, and yet it's the one that all the fans love. Like, even though we feel like this was Zao, the band Zao, their Liberate CX and Farius album that came out in like 99.
Okay. I've only heard the name.
Yeah, so like Zayo's one of those bands that like they influenced a lot of like modern metalcore or like hardcore bands, like, but yet they themselves always kind of remained in like a cult type band. Yeah, like, they never became huge, which is crazy because like all these other bands that became way bigger than them were influenced by them, but they themselves never really became that huge. But
no, that is crazy.
But I was listening to their guitarist. I was doing an interview about like the anniversary of that album, you know, like because they just reissued it recently on vinyl. And he was talking about that, how it was like his memories of that album were just, you know, that they were never happy with it because it felt unfinished. Like there was all this stuff they wanted to do and the songs never really quite reached what they wanted to do with them. Mm-hmm. But yet it's the one that is like probably the most famous for them. Yeah. Like it's the one that like everybody talks about. And then like everybody compares everything they've done since too. And it's like, how does that happen? You know, and as an artist, I can understand because like there's even things that like I've been a part of before where I have people bring up years later. They're like, "Oh, we loved this song you did with this band or whatever," and I'm just be like, "Dude, I was like 20 something and I wasn't very good at the time. Honestly, it's not that great." They're like, "No, it was awesome," you know?
No, because like on my my second EP that I put out last year, Lakebed. Like I was so unsatisfied, mostly lyrically, with how I feel like I rushed the fuck out of that always, and like,
which is crazy because there's
there's songs on there I think about taking off of Spotify and Apple Music. Oh,
don't do that
all the fucking time, and then I'll have someone literally send me like my least favorite fucking song ever, and that happened. It actually happened twice in 1 week. 2 people told me they liked this song. And I was like, okay, we're like, cool.
That's when like you as the artist have to just be like, okay, I have got to let go of my own personal feelings about this because
and like you're not the only mind. Once you release it in the world, you're not the only mind thinking about it. So sometimes it is kind of like
I mean, the truth is like once you release something out into the world, like it's no longer yours. I mean, it's the fans, it's the people who are listening, like they're gonna decide whether it's good or not. And there's not really anything you can do about that afterwards. It's like, I mean, there are songs that I've been a part of that I thought would be big successes that I thought were really good that just never went anywhere somehow. And then other songs, like I said, where I couldn't have given a shit less and think that it should have been removed, but people will remind me of it even 20 years later.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you remember that song you did back in high school with that shitty high school band you were in? Like, I loved this song. And it's like, how? Like I was like 17 and barely knew how to play guitar. I mean, come on.
Yeah. There's like 3 people out there that still know about my band, You're Letting the Light In.
I'm one of them. I'm one of them.
You're one of them. Yeah, the rest of them are dead. So
yeah. Like actually we talked about that when you were on with Lizards the last time. I was like the first time I ever knew of you or Joe was like because of that, because you had been interviewed on a friend of ours podcast that, you know, and that was my first exposure to it. And I was like, oh, I really like this. And like, these guys seem like
it's still on Bandcamp.
Yeah, I know.
To anyone listening, you can look up You're Letting the Light In. You can hear me do my best, like Tom DeLonge impression singing. And
it's good stuff though, man. I liked it.
It was really cute music. Like looking back on it, it was like that was fun. That was a lot of fun. Joey and I have like almost thrown the idea of like trying to like, there was like an unreleased song we have finished for that. So we're like, what if we like tried to write that again and like did it as like a split? But that's, you know, that's all kind of like up in the air. But we did talk about like wanting to do like a split potentially like
that
next
would be
year.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's like
he's writing a bunch of stuff right now. He's involved in like 7 bands already.
Oh, I know. Yeah. And I'll get him tracked back down to get him on here too again. And like,
oh, absolutely.
But it's like I know how fucking busy he is. Like I have seen.
No, he's a fucking workhorse.
I was so pissed off though because they came and they finally. I mean, I feel bad because they have tried to get shows here in Lafayette numerous times and had it fall through for one reason or another over the last 2 years. And they finally got here and played just like within the last month. And I was going to go to it and I totally spaced the day that it happened. I didn't realize that it was that day. And later on that night, I went out to work and stuff. And I was like, I messaged my brother and he was like, oh yeah, we just got done at the tax show. And I was like, wait, fuck, that was tonight? And he's like, yeah, I was kind of surprised you weren't there. I was like, motherfuck. Like I was supposed to be there. Like they've been
at the tax show. Like it's just like I don't know. It sounds more like people just doing their taxes.
But yeah, so it's one of those, like, I have some of my favorite memories of the last 5 years have been like playing shows with you guys, like when you were in Lizards and stuff, and when like just that whole family of people.
Oh, and Joey's always a joy to watch just play on stage. And you know, I felt very inspired by that when I was in that band too. I mean, I felt like I could just
watching you guys then would inspire all of us, because then it was like this constant bar raising thing where it was like, and especially playing shows with you guys, because it was always a like nobody wanted to follow you because it was like, because we couldn't compete. It was like, God damn it. Like,
oh my God, stop. No, it was, I mean,
we couldn't compete with the energy level.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think we played any better. I think I just busted some holes in some walls. That's all, which has happened twice. So
it was always just like the energy level was just like nobody could compete. Like, and we just be like, nobody wanted, like, we would all joke about that, how like none of us wanted to follow you guys because it was like we always seemed like a down note compared to like coming off of your guys' sets.
No. You had a great energy on stage. Last few times I saw you, I remember you throwing your guitar up in the air and shit. Like,
oh yeah, I mean we had our stuff too, but it was just like, yeah. I think partially like with us, like with Eros, when I was doing that, you know, with it being a 3-piece was a little limiting to some degree. Like, and then, you know, we did eventually become a 4-piece for a short time, but that was like right when the pandemic hit and everything happened. And, you know, like Eros has basically been on like semi-permanent hiatus ever since the pandemic hit, because we all are a part of other things and doing other stuff. And it's like, it just kind of died out. We never ended it. It just was kind of we can't make anything work right now. Like we're all doing other things.
No, exactly.
So, but yeah, I mean, in fact, the last thing we ever did was Fried Fest in 2020, which was the last Fried Fest before we lost Bennett. We played that, and that was like the last thing we ever did as far as Eros, anything with Eros. And which, man, that's Jesus. I mean, we just hit the 2-year anniversary of that.
No, literally, like what, yesterday or the other day?
Yeah. And that was, we all were kind of going through it yesterday a bit. It's just not the same, man. It's just not like, and it's crazy to think how, you know, it also puts in perspective, for me at least, like just how much of an impact one individual can have on so many people. Like,
oh, absolutely. Like, he was just like one of my favorite people to approach ever about every, like I was going through my Snapchat like memories, and I just like, I found him randomly on there from like, he was at like another fest that we played somewhere in like the South Bend area from like 3 years ago. And oh my God, it was just, I don't know. I was like fucking with him on the camera. I was fucking with everyone on the camera. I was like, I don't know. I was on one that day.
Yeah.
But like, he's like the only person I know that like him and his mom would like drive down to Indianapolis on like a Thursday night to come see us if we had a show. And like it's, no one would message him about it. We would just post the flyer and he would just fucking be there, you know? And I'm just like, I mean, he drove way the fuck out of your way.
Like he came out to at least 2 shows that we did that were nowhere near him. Like, like he came all the way out to see us.
He just lived and breathed to like just support a scene of local artists. Like, I'm forever grateful for all the opportunities we were given through him. And on top of that, like he was just like such like just so fucking genuine. Like on top of all that, like he could have just been doing this for like a business or just like for himself or something. But like on top of that, like I could tell that he truly, truly just wanted to do it because he wanted to be around good people at all times.
And it was the family that he built was a group of like-minded people, or even people who were maybe into different things, like we're all still kind of had the same heart. Like we all were all like inclusive. Like it was a very all-inclusive thing. And I've given him credit numerous times. Like honestly, if it hadn't been for him, and I've talked about this on our podcast before, if it hadn't been for Bennett, like I wouldn't have been doing this. I wouldn't have ended up, turning Eros into like a full-time band. Like
it like created branches all through Indiana.
We as Eros were a studio band. Like it was just we never really had intentions of playing live. We were just making our own little studio EPs, and we got the opportunity to do one festival, and it was just going to be a one-off. Like I just, got the people together to do it as a one-off. And then Bennett was at that festival, and he came up to me afterwards and was like, "You need to come play my house." And we ended up coming and playing there just maybe 2 months later, a month or two later. We ended up playing at his place for the first time. And because of that started the ball rolling on us making it a full-time thing where we were playing shows. I mean, we played tons of shows for a couple of years. And it was because of him, because he was like, "No, you guys need to keep doing this."
It's like there was like the center of it all, I felt like, was like in Converse, and it just like extended all these like branches out to all the like towns around him, like going south, like headed up north, like towards like South Bend and stuff. Like it would just bring all these people together there.
And I did not realize how many people knew him.
From like out of state, all over the country.
I mean, there were people, so
even other countries.
We had mutual friends that I didn't even realize knew him. Like I had a friend of mine.
And I'm not surprised.
I had a friend of mine who I've known, since I was a teenager. And when Bennett passed, I had made a post about it or something, and this guy commented, and I was like, "Wait, you knew him?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I knew him. He used to come out to these basketball games a lot." And I met him through that. And it was like, "So wait, what?" it's like, "Wait, you knew him?" Like, "Oh yeah." He's like, "I love the dude. He was great." But we became friends because we would go to these like high school basketball games and stuff together, like, and we'd run into each other. And I was like, wow, small world. Like even somebody I did not for a second think would have had a connection to him did. And
Indiana is the small world state, first of all.
It's
just all small towns for like 99% of it. Like everyone just fucking knows everybody.
But yeah, man, I don't know. It's been different, definitely, since he's been gone. Like, I feel like
it's kind of a little void down there.
The scene is kind of unfortunately done what I thought it was going to do. It kind of fractured a little bit, and some have split off and kind of done their own things, and some have still kind of stuck with it. And I feel like the people, and I feel like the people that like really were close to it, like very close to it, have still all stuck together and like have still stayed in contact and still been a support system for each other.
It was most likely a combination of that and COVID all happening.
100%. I mean, I mean, that's honestly, it was a big part of what even killed this podcast for a while. We, as you guys came out and did the studio session and everything. Like, our whole idea was, let's bring bands out, talk to them, and like have them record like a 20-minute set in the studio. And then we'd put it all together, and it was like this really cool idea. And then of course COVID hits, and then it's like everybody starts canceling. Like, we're not coming out, we're not coming out, we're not coming. And it was like, okay. And then we're like, well, we could just put this on hold for a little bit, maybe. And then it just kept getting worse and worse. And then it got to the point too where like even amongst those of us that were involved with running it, different people started kind of leaving and doing other things because they just didn't have time. And so I was like, you know what? I'm running myself ragged doing this all by myself. I should probably just stop.
Yeah.
And then starting it back up, I was like, I just want to talk to people again. I miss talking to all of you guys. Like, that's like,
Oh yeah, just having conversations like this.
It gave me an excuse. Yeah, it gave me an excuse to have conversations with my friends. Like, it's like I can,
exactly.
I'm making
It's just
content
gives me an excuse to talk about anything music related. And like I said, like I admittedly just like not really been promoting a whole lot. And then when I tried to, either like I think things would just fall apart with plans, or B, I just lost that motivation again.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's there, and I'm not done with music by any fucking stretch of the imagination. That will literally never be the case.
I was gonna say, you have a whole group of people that would be hunting.
I mean,
you down.
well, no. I mean, like, if I go into my phone right now and I go to my notes app, I have like all of these like demos and like redone shit
like my phone.
that I've done on my computer. Like, and that was just one file you were looking at. I have like two more of those with more demos in them, and it's just I make shit when I want to or when I can, and I have a lot of ideas. I have especially like ideas for 2023 that I'm thinking about doing. It's just I'm kind of into like how I want to execute that kind of stage right now, because I do think it's time I need to like start playing shows again and make it kind of at least a semi-regular fucking thing, but
yeah, I mean,
I told you, I'm on the up and up.
I told you, what was that, last year? I think it was, or maybe it was earlier this year. I was like, we could get you here in Lafayette area, and like you would do well here. Like the crowd here,
I would love to.
Like what you do would go over very well with like the campus crowd, like over at Purdue.
And I would love to.
Like I know it would. So it's like, I gotta get you over here. I gotta.
No, for sure. I mean, just hit me up with the date and I'll sign up for it. I literally will. I technically played a show like last week, and I say technically because it wasn't really like a show. It was just I know some people who own a local shop here. Shout out to Face Cabinet. They sell I can't even think of the word about it right now. When they sell like crystals and stuff and like odd kind of trinkets here and there, like and they sell a lot of local art too. But it's like mainly like I would say like they have a lot of like amethyst crystals and stuff like that. What's the fucking word for that?
I'm trying to think of like what the term for that kind of a shop is, but I know what you're talking about because we have a couple of them here too.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Anyway, Face Cabinet, they asked me for it was Small Business Saturday, which is like a national thing that I didn't really like know existed, but it was, I don't know, they had me just play an acoustic set for about like 2 hours.
That's cool.
And it was mostly covers, but it got me like, it motivated me to just learn a bunch of fucking covers from different artists. And I just kind of translated those onto my guitar. I didn't really like look anything up specifically. I was just like, if I can play it on guitar based on how it sounds here, then I'm going to do it, because I'm very much like an all ear kind of person. I was too. I can read tabs loosely, but like, I don't sight read. Like I was in band class and I bullshitted my way through that those entire 4 years playing percussion, like there's no way I was going to read music, especially since I didn't go through like the middle school phase of it. And the fact that they even let me in high school, I was kind of surprised, but it was a really small school. So I think they really needed all the bodies they could get. Luckily, I was pretty good. Like I caught on pretty easy. I just wasn't about to read like notes, because with percussion specifically, like I would just like read like hits. So it'd be like one note on the same line. I just had to know when to count that. So
Yeah, I was
Like,
very much the same way. I didn't have any technical background at all in music. It was all by
Mhm.
ear. And it was funny because starting out as a drummer, doing it all by ear, like it was all about feel and sound, and like I understood how it worked in that sense. And then it was like years later when I started working with other people where they were like, "Oh, well that's," and then they would explain it to me and I'd be like, "I have no idea what you're talking about." And then they would like break it down for me like, "Okay, this is," I mean, it's crazy for me to think about now, like especially having been doing audio production and stuff for years like I have. But
Mhm.
like early on in my life, like I didn't understand like measures or beats or any of that stuff. And yet as a drummer, that's all stuff that's like essential to being a drummer. Like, but I was all just going on feel, not on technicality and of structure or anything.
Yeah.
And I learned that stuff through other people that I worked with later. And
Mhm.
but I still kind of prefer it that way. I'm kind of glad that I didn't learn a lot of technical stuff except for kind of through other people, because it meant that I wasn't as limited by like technicality.
Yeah.
Like, this is how this works. You can only do it this way. I was like, I would just throw shit together that I thought sounded cool. And it may not be technically accurate, but it worked.
Did it make a noise?
Exactly. It's like, did it
Then
make a
there
noise?
you
Did
go.
people like it? You're fine.
Yeah.
Like,
It doesn't even matter if people like it. Did it make a noise? Then if you like it,
that's
fine.
true. That's very true. I mean,
It's
there's
called
a
a
whole
metaphysical store. That's, by the way, it was metaphysical store. That's what
okay.
those are called.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yes. So I was just sitting there in like an aisle of a shop, like playing, like covering like fucking Billie Eilish or Frank Ocean, shit like that. Like,
Nice.
and I'd sprinkle my songs in there too. But it was really fun. I covered a lot of songs I never thought I would cover before. And I'd do it again. It was really fun.
Well, we'll make sure that happens soon. I will make sure.
Absolutely.
I will make sure I get you down here. Like,
for sure.
Well, and like I mean, there was the little bit of the mix up as far as whether you were coming down here or doing this through Zoom. Like,
oh yeah, I mean,
like,
I figured I was just gonna go down there and physically do a podcast, but I mean, like, we have technology.
Yeah,
like,
well, the thing is that like I told you in the message, like I would fucking love to have you down here today. I would have like you have no idea, like the whole family, like me and Jen and Benny and everybody would have just like made a whole fucking day of it. But
I messaged him last night. I was like, "Girl, I forgot to tell you, I'm gonna be down in Lafayette tomorrow."
Yeah, she sent me a text. She's like, "Are you doing something at the shop?" And I'm like, "No, what am I doing?" And then I realized what was happening.
FaceTimed me. Then she FaceTimed me. She's like, "Bro, are you fucking serious?" She's like, "We're doing brunch here tomorrow." And I'm like, well.
Well, that's why I said, I was like, we all would love having you here. We would just make a whole day of it, and we just hang out with you all day down here if we could. But like,
no, absolutely, you guys are fun.
But
she said they're gonna have mimosas. I was like, damn, maybe I will come down.
Well, shit. But, I mean, if you do decide, you just gotta hit me up. Let me know. I'll be there.
For sure. But no, she FaceTimed me and she was hanging out with her peeps. I was hanging out with my peeps too. So it was.
Yeah, it was funny.
I was glad she FaceTimed me. I didn't talk to her forever.
Yeah, it was like we still have the shop. Like it's still there. It's still an operating thing, but it's not like how it was set up before. And I don't have like all this podcast stuff set up there anymore. Like it's just set up as like our rehearsal and recording studio setup now. So it's like I don't have the cameras. I don't have all the stuff to do it like I used to. It's all here at my house. So I'm like, I can't really do it there. I'd love to have you here, but I can't do it there right now. It's not set up for it. But oh, definitely. I mean, and my thought too, at some point in the future is to like, even if I can't necessarily do, both in the same day, like have everybody come down and do something in the studio like we used to. It could always be one of those things where it's like, oh, like I do an interview, conversation with you like this. And then maybe a month or so down the road, if we work it out, you can come down, we'll track some things, record it, and then I can just post that up too. And then it doesn't necessarily have to be all a part of the same thing.
Absolutely.
Like, so, I know that will happen at some point because I'm going to make it happen at some point. It is my goal. It's my goal to make sure that I get you to come down and actually record some stuff in the shop and
kidnap me if you have to.
I don't think we'd have to kidnap you. I think you're pretty willing.
Yeah. Or you just bag me over the head and put me in the trunk.
Yeah, but see, you know, I mean, I'm sure that's the way you like it, so I'll just do whatever you want.
Yeah, you're catching on.
Oh man. But yeah, so like I just could not get over when you started releasing your solo stuff. Like when I would listen to it, I would like I thought to myself like this is like this is like stuff that's like current. This is like your finger is like right on the pulse of like what is happening in a creative sense. And like
I feel like that's only even more so now with like stuff I'm trying to create right now.
But it didn't come across as like how some people do, where it's like, oh, I'm trying to I'm trying to be successful with this. I'm trying to do, you know, I'm just only writing things that I know are gonna, like, it didn't feel like that at all. But it was like, oh, this is like dead on. Like and I fully expected
I hope that I had like
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying my goal with it is that I hope that like I just at least have my own kind of sound on it, my own touch, and that it doesn't necessarily sound like something that was like a complete ripoff.
Oh, it does
something
not.
Else, or if that it was just trying to be like as trendy as possible and like a gross like like some like there's like a certain side of TikTok that's kind of influenced the way people write music. Like,
oh yeah, I've seen
songs were used to have to be like 3 minutes and 30 seconds. Now they have to be like 1 minute and 45. Like,
yeah, oh yeah.
The attention span is like getting really down, you know. And I try to make sure that like I make every second of my song count if I'm gonna like do something in it. Like I don't want to just meander and have like too much of an instrumental passage if it's just not going to do anything, you know, like going, you know, I just don't want it to go on too long if it's doing something.
But the thing is, you've got some instrumental buildups and things in the songs that I feel like they're perfect in that they are setting the mood. Like,
oh yeah.
And it immediately puts you in a feeling before the vocals even come in, before the context of the lyrical side of the song comes in. You're already
Ghost
getting put
is my
in
favorite
that.
song I've written.
Like,
Ghost is my favorite song I've written this far.
Ghost, like, yeah, that song.
I feel like the journey I made it. And like, how long is that song? I think it's like
it says 4 minutes and 29 seconds.
That's incredible. I think that song was once like 6 minutes and 30 seconds long. So like I said, like I cut down what I want to cut down because I don't think it's necessary to put that in, you know, like, and I couldn't imagine Ghosts being like a 2-minute track, you know.
Oh, there's no way.
There's no way. I want to try and make songs that are like 2 to 2:30 seconds, but that's just hard for me to do. Like
the thing with Ghosts is like I couldn't imagine it being any shorter. Like I couldn't figure, like listening to it, it's like
I think it's a perfect length.
How could there's like no fat to trim off of it? It's like it's like it flows perfectly. Like you don't feel like it. It's one of those songs where like, yeah, it's like 4.5 minutes, but it doesn't feel like 4.5 minutes. Like because you're so engrossed in it that like it doesn't feel like it's that long.
No, this is my favorite kind of song. This is like when you hear something that's like 6 minutes, but it feels like 2 minutes in. Like those are the best kind of songs that can like justify their length.
It's better than the other side where it's like it's a short song, but God, you're like, man, is this ever going to end?
yeah, I've heard those before.
Oh yeah, we all have.
But yeah, like thank you. Like I said, I just want to like make sure that like whatever I make, I'm happy with what I've made, you know. And like I said, like I've always like really enjoyed writing stuff that I want to be catchy, but also sounds like authentically my sound and like something that sounds unique. And like those are the bands I've always been drawn towards. I mean, since I was a kid. I mean, like it's why like I still look back at like System of a Down as like and that's one of those bands that I like. I'm so enthralled with how popular they got. because
It's
they're
amazing
fucking
album.
weird. They're fucking weird.
Oh yeah.
But like,
Especially when you consider, like, you know, I've been with them as a fan since self-titled, since the original one in 98. Like, in fact, I might have told this story before on the podcast, but that was literally the first parental advisory sticker I ever bought, like album I ever bought.
No shit.
I was like, what, I would have been like 13 at the time when that came out.
Solid.
And I bought that, you know, and of course, you know, I was in a somewhat conservative Christian home, so of course I'm like hiding it from my parents and shit. Like,
oh yeah, you don't want to let them do that.
And but
they
like,
would have just heard that, and they probably would have just said, "This sounds really gay."
Well, eventually, like my parents did like find it and hear it and whatever. But like, it was one of the, and my parents never really cared about like stylistically with music. My dad was the one who got me into like listening to metal music and punk music as a kid. Like he was, you know, there's not even a 20-year age gap between myself and my parents. So like,
yeah,
you know, it's musically like there's a lot of crossover. And but yeah, that album though, especially that album, when you listen to that and you think like how much they blew up later, you're like, how did this become like something that skyrocketed this band? Like, you know, and I mean, honestly, it was Toxicity. That album was what really blew them up, but like they came from that first. Like
they put blast beats in their songs, and they're like a platinum selling band. Yeah, like that's a huge like win for them. Like I don't know, just like the intensity mixed with the odd, very odd, like eccentric vocals that like Serge would bring sometimes. Like in my first album experience with them, like I had always like had a lot of their singles like downloaded from like fucking FrostWire, and like and I would get a bunch of these apps on my phone that were like downloading music for free when I had an Android, because those were very abundant. And I would just download my favorite songs from them. But then like when I was like a freshman in high school, I like finally got like grasped the concept of listening to an album. And I listened to like Toxicity front to back. And I was like, instantly, I was like, I want to know what it feels like to hear that for the first time again. Like, I don't know. I had a big grin on my face the entire time. Like, and I can show that album to just about anyone. And like, I feel like they just end up like liking it at least. What's like crazy, it's something they just can't help but like.
Yeah, what's crazy with that album is like I very much remember when that album came out, and I remember all the hype about it before it came out, and it literally released days before 9/11 happened.
9/11.
And I remember hearing it. Just so like all these memories are all attached in my head. So they're all linked. So like Toxicity to me is kind of linked to that because I heard it right before that happened. So, and I was like 16 at the time. So like very much in an age where I was going to remember all of that stuff for like the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And like it was that album. And just before that, Slipknot's Iowa album had come out just like a few weeks previous to that.
Yeah.
So I had both of those albums back to back, like happening right when 9/11 happened. So like in my head, all of that stuff's tied together. And like, so like the listening experience of like hearing those albums in full, like front to back for the first time. Like I remember the first time I heard Toxicity back to back in my friend's car. Like when I went and got it, I picked it up.
Yeah.
And like so that memory's in my head. Like, so it's like I understand though. I wish that I could go back and experience some of those albums, like you said, for the first time again, because especially once you've like played them over and over and over again to yourself, and to the point of where like I could probably recite both of those albums front to back without anything playing. Like
I can tune my guitar to drop C, and I can play just about every riff on that album by ear, probably. I used to do it all the time. I would just like try and learn like Prison Song into Needles and the Deer Dance. Like I literally have memories of me as a kid doing that in my room, like just playing through the album with the band.
That.
Like I was fucking in the band.
I did that with that album. I did that with Deftones Around the Fur. I can play like every song on that album back to back because that was an album that was a big influence on me when I was young. Um, Manson's Hollywood album, I can play front to back.
No
Like,
shit.
yeah, because that was another one of those albums that was a huge influence on me that like I learned to play some stuff too and was like,
Yeah.
I fell in love. And honestly, like that was what that album was what made me fall in love with John Five, you know, the guitar
The
player.
guitarist, yeah.
And before I even really knew who he was or anything, but I was like, there's just something about this Manson album in particular. It's like, it felt to me like this is like the perfect blend of everything he had done up to that point, kind of all put together. And like, there's just something very eerie about this guitar playing that I just could not figure out what it was. And then of course, when I learned about John and like I started kind of diving into like his history of things he had done before, and then since, you know, and
I haven't like deeply dove into his stuff, but
like
I've heard like a couple songs here and there.
Yeah, and his solo stuff
talented.
obviously is like, you know, he's got a lot of like really just like shreddy stuff that he does in his solo things.
Yeah, which I love that stuff. Like,
but his albums are so crazy. Like they're so
I listen
bipolar.
To a lot.
Like his albums will literally, you'll go from one song that's like industrial metal sounding, and then the next one will be like a bluegrass song, straight up. Like, and you're like, what?
Bluegrass?
But he's amazing at both of them, and you're just like, dude, as a guitar player, fuck you. Like I wish.
Yeah, I mean that's the kind of guitarist you want if you're like a big like pop star. Which I mean, for better or for worse,
he played for.
Manson was a pop star.
Yeah,
like he kind of was in the '90s, and so I mean, you know, when you want that, you just hire someone who can kind of be versatile, because like people in pop in general, like they want someone who's versatile like that, because I mean, like. They kind of, I mean, you know, I know pop all like could just kind of all blend together, but it's, I mean, there's a lot of different sounds in the popular sphere, you know, I mean, like,
especially right now.
especially right now. I mean, like, you have people like Olivia Rodrigo, who was like basically part of like kind of part of this like pop punk revival going on.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like 100%. Yeah. It's like bringing back that like that old like Paramore sound, you know, that like
that Avril Lavigne kind of shit.
Yeah, and it's and I love it. And I what I find
I do funny, too. It's like it's so cute.
What I find funny though is like
really catchy song.
Being old. I will say old. I'm not that old, but I am significantly older than most everybody else that I'm.
It's just a judgment free zone here.
But in that, it's what's funny for me in it is having lived through that originally, seeing it come back around now 20 25 years later, and hearing what elements of the original scene stuck around, and then hearing the things that the modern, like the new revival of it is mixing with other things is interesting.
Yeah.
And I love it, like,
it's
because
cool.
It is different. It is mixing some other things with it. So it's like it's kind of this nostalgia, but yet not because it's not exactly the way it was before.
It's kind of like it's almost like, you know, like, I mean, the genre, I don't think any genre ever dies. It kind of just evolves, but sometimes it kind of makes a circle back around to like a sound from before. I mean, that same kind of shit's happening with like new wave and like synth wave stuff right now.
Oh,
like
100%. Yeah.
Once After Hours by The Weeknd dropped, and like there were already people like doing that, but like After Hours was like the moment where I felt like everyone is going to start hitting that nostalgia wave.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
Or like house music. Like house music's making a comeback for pop artists right now. And I feel like Lady Gaga kind of did that with like when she released Chromatica, and then now you have like Beyonce just released her new album, and it's this year. It's a lot of house music on that.
Oh yeah, it's been interesting to see and hear, like I said, the things that are coming back around, you know, and it's for somebody like myself who like actually has like physical memories, like I can visually remember things from like the late 80s into the early 90s and throughout all of the 90s. Like it's interesting for me to hear and see these things that are coming back around, but with a different twist on them. So it's like, and the only thing that I find funny is when you've got a lot of like Zoomers who are like nostalgic for a time period in which they never even existed.
Mhm.
And like they try to like they're emulating certain things from that time frame, and then like me as somebody who was alive during that time is like, you're close, but you're not exactly right.
Yeah.
Like you're close. It's close, but it's not quite there. Like, and trust me,
But,
you don't really want to.
I mean,
you don't really want to.
I feel like most of them have probably obviously been influenced. But I would assume that most artists that make it big have done their research to an extent. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, like they've probably been influenced by shit in the 80s because they would like listen to old records like maybe their parents had, like, and that like they would find some influence in that authentically, and not just necessarily like, I guess, you know, getting a sound just because like someone else did it. I mean, that might happen afterwards, you know, a little bit, like if this 80s synthwave thing just kind of like stays a thing for a long time, like you might have some artists who are like, yeah, I'm influenced by like The Weeknd, you know, like who did.
Oh, like, 100%. I mean, that The Weeknd album though, that one in particular, I played that thing over and over and over again throughout.
Have you heard Dawn FM yet?
A little bit of it. It's one of those that I have yet to like sit down and listen through all the way. Like I need to. And
it's got some bangers. Like I think Sacrifice is like one of my favorite singles I've heard this year. And it essentially just sounds like if Michael Jackson and Daft Punk like did a song together.
That's
and
awesome.
it's gold. It is, the beat is so infectious. I could go on about it. But it's
I just like when After Hours like came out, it was like, because that was like right at the beginning of 2020, wasn't it? It was like early.
Yeah, it was because I remember when The Weeknd released the single for either Blinding Lights or no, I think the first single he released that. I wasn't like a huge Weeknd fan before that, but I remember being on like the start of that album cycle before it even came out, because I was just kind of like enthralled with that track he released.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what the first one was.
It wasn't Blinding Lights, but it was. I'm gonna find it right now.
I'm looking at the track listing, and I'm trying to think of which one it was.
Heartless. It was Heartless.
It was Heartless, because I was thinking it was Heartless, but I was like, is it Heartless? What was the first one? Because I remember
it was like a little more like, it sounded a little more like traditional, like for him. So I think he was kind of like easing into like, you know, some of the like.
I just remember like that album, like going through the pandemic, like, you know, because it was unstoppable. You know, what I've been doing for a living for the last 3 years is like, I've been a rideshare driver in our city for the last like 3 years. So like driving around in the middle of the night, driving college kids.
I did that.
And like, I listened to that album a lot throughout the lockdown period when I was out working. And it was crazy because with everything being shut down, like obviously we didn't have a lot of work. But we would be like, there were people that were like essential workers and things, and we were deemed essential, you know, because we were driving people. So we were out. So that album is very much tied to my memory of like the desolation of how the city was during the lockdown, because I would be driving around late at night with that album on repeat.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it fits so well for like just that atmospheric mood of everything. And it's like, I'm sure it did. It's
a moody fucking album.
It's so tied to like all of my feelings at that time, like going through all that. And I love that album. Like, and it was one of those,
like you were talking about, it's like what we were talking about earlier when you were talking about Slipknot and System, like you have a picture painted with that album. You know, you have a time frame around when you heard a certain album. I have that for a lot of albums.
Yeah. That was one that I think forever in my memory will be attached to the lockdown and the pandemic. Like,
just the empty streets.
It was like just this driving around the city. And I mean, you know, the Lafayette area is not that big. I think we're like, you know, at maximum, like the metropolitan area is like maybe 250,000 people between the two cities, between Lafayette and West Lafayette and Purdue campus and everything. but like that was
Still
the first
fun.
time. That was the first time I had ever seen the city that quiet. Like,
Yeah.
because that year, you know, all the students, you know, the population of our area goes up by like, I think it's like between 30 and 40,000 people every school year. There's like between 30 and 40,000 students, I think, every
Yeah.
year. And so obviously it's enough that like you feel it when the students are here. It's busier, there's a lot
Yeah.
more people. And then when they leave, you know, for the summer, it's a little slower. It's not as, you know, as
Mhm.
active. It's kind of like if you're a holiday town, you know, if you have like one of those cities that, or like the snowbird cities in Florida and stuff, you know, where it's like all
Mhm.
the snowbirds come down for the winter time and like they
Or
get
like where I grew up around the lakes in Angola, Indiana.
Mhm.
It's a tourist kind of
Yep.
thing. Like
I had
James
a
is
similar
half.
experience up where because we grew up, my brother and I, we grew up in the Delphi area, and just north of us is
Mhm.
Monticello. So we had the lakes there with like Indiana Beach and all of that. So same
Yeah.
kind of experience where we grew up
Mhm.
too.
Yeah,
And
it was a Laker town during the summer, and then during the school semesters, it was a college town. There is a college town because Trine's up there too.
yeah, so at least you kind of
That's
have
where I went to
both.
school.
Like, but
Yeah,
here
yeah, yeah.
it was. I just remember though, like with you know the students left here at the beginning of 2020 for spring break, right?
Mhm.
And then never came back. And that was like the weirdest thing
Yeah, they were
because
all taking their classes online. My little sister
yeah,
still do to this day.
and but because of that, it was like the whole area was just desolate. Like I'd never really seen it like that. Where I mean,
Mhm.
and then of course everything was shutting down. So like all these places that used to be, you know, we used to have stores that were open 24/7 all the time, and all these things that were always, you know, there's
Oh
always
my God.
activity, and then
I
it just
miss the
became
24/7 store.
yeah. Tell me about it. At this
The
point, we
capitalist in me really misses it. Like I'm like, God, like, you know, I want to fucking snack at 3 in the morning. And
uh-huh,
I feel so
uh-huh.
privileged. I have the only CVS in Fort Wayne that is open 24/7, like a mile down my road. So, I mean, if I have the munchies at like 3 in the morning, I can just DoorDash something and I can
Well,
actually
like
get.
here, what got really bad was like when everything shut down, there was like one restaurant that stayed open 24/7, and that was a Taco Bell. And what became bad about it was that they became just absolutely
Warriors.
overwhelmed with everybody was getting shit from them all the
Yeah.
time.
Braver
So
than the US Marines for
yeah,
that.
they couldn't like, and they could not keep up with orders. They were just swamped all the time. And like
Oh,
still to
fucking
this day,
Vietnam.
like they are the one in town. Like we finally got a few other places that have started opening more, you know, than you know, not. I think maybe there's like 3 or 4 places now that are 24/7 again, but it's like a couple of gas stations, that Taco Bell, and I think maybe one other restaurant. It's like 24/7 again.
Yeah,
But aside from that, everything else is still closed down. And it's just, you know, I guess I got on all that though, just talking about that album and like the memories
yeah,
that attached.
yeah.
Like
Here we are talking about COVID.
driving around the city, like you're right. Like there's nothing like, you know, driving down these just desolate city streets. I mean, there's like, you know, everybody's still there, but everybody's inside.
That's a
So it's
great
like you,
picture to paint, like to at least remember an album by, like artistically, like that. That's a
yeah,
good
and
memory
it's just like
to have.
it was one of those weird things where like it just fits so well. Like for some reason, it just fit so well.
Mhm.
It was that one, and I don't know if you know the band Health. Like
Yeah, I love Health.
I love Health. I absolutely love Health, and like they're trying to think what was the album that came out right
Was it the
before.
collab one they did?
No, it was right
Or was
before that.
like the red one, or was it the orange one?
It was the
Or like volume 4 or something?
yeah, I think it was. I can tell you right now. It would have been okay, so it would have been Disco 4 Plus.
Yeah.
would have been the one that
Wait,
came out.
so Disco 4 was
that was the one that had like Strange Days on it and like NC-17. That album I listened to. I listened to that one religiously through that time period too.
I listened to like there was like a handful of tracks from it that I would like work out to a lot, and I got into them. And then they had this like collab kind of record where it was like a guest artist on every song, and they were getting like underground like rappers like fucking Ghostmane on it, but they were also getting like
that was I think that was part 2. I think it was that Disco 4 part 2. I think
they had like 100 Gex on it too and stuff, where they would get like singers. They get like
it was Disco 4 part 2. I'm looking at it now. Yep. That has like it has tons of people on it. Like it's got Poppy, Nine Inch Nails, like
the that Nine Inch Nails track is really good.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of which, that makes me think of the fucking Halsey album that came out.
I still have not listened to that.
How the fuck have you not listened to that? Jesus Christ, dude. It is so goddamn good.
I don't know what's stopping me, because I know Trent Reznor's name has been attached to that since she released that, and I just haven't listened to it yet.
It's not just him, it's him and Atticus both. Like,
yeah.
I mean, it like, Jesus Christ, that album is so good. Like, it is very much, it's very much like when you listen to it, you're like, oh yeah, it sounds like Nine Inch Nails with Poppy, or not Poppy, but with Halsey. And it's like, yeah, that's pretty much exactly what it is. But there's still little bits of, because like she had a hand in even like some of the way the music, because like she wrote a lot of the like the basics of like the structure of the songs.
Yeah,
I would send them like the demos of like, this is like my basic structure of it, you know, with maybe like a piano part and her singing or something. And then they would just take that and then they would build off of it and do all sorts of stuff. So she did have a hand in the song structures to a degree, but it is like when you listen to it, there's so much, there are definitely parts of it that you're just like, oh, this is just a straight up Nine Inch Nails song. Like it sounds like Nine Inch Nails, but with her voice.
Good for them. Good for her too.
It is so like, that was one of those things, like when that came out and I listened to that, I was just like, this is for me, like a virtually flawless album. Like the collaboration between them worked so well. Like, so definitely you need
to the title being very dramatic. What was it called?
Oh, for the actual album?
I can't love you. If I can't have love, I want power. That's the one, right? Yeah. Well, I'm saving it right now.
You need to listen to it. It is so good. And I love Hopeless Fountain Kingdom is like another one of my all-time favorite albums. Like I used to listen to that a lot, like on repeat, that Halsey album. And
I've never really deep dove into Halsey's music.
It's funny because Halsey was one of those that like I don't know how I got into so hard. Like it was like I'd heard a couple of her things before, and then I got into her like right around the time that Hopeless Fountain Kingdom was coming out in 2017. Okay. And when that album, because I think I'd heard a couple of the singles from it before the whole album had come out, and I was like, I really like where this is going. So when it dropped, I remember listening to it and just being like, this is like, yet again, this is another one of those where I just feel like it's almost flawless. Like it's so good. And I'm one of those, I'm very particular when it comes to pop music. Like I very much can sense like cheesy, disposable pop shit that like I don't care about. Like it's literally just being made to make money and move on to the next thing. Like it's not. Yeah, and so when I gush about a pop artist or a pop album, it's because like I really connected with something. Like
exactly.
I'm not just like a general pop listener. Like the only time that I could say I'm a general pop listener is like when I'm working. Sometimes I will have the local pop radio station on just as background noise while I'm working. And so I'll get exposure to it from that. But like most of the time I'm hearing the stuff just being like, oh God, most of this stuff is garbage. Like this is just like disposable crap. But then every now and then you'll hear something that comes on and I'll be like, okay, like this is legitimate. Like there's something real here. Like, and you can tell, like you can always tell
when I feel like when like Lorde came onto the scene when I was in high school, like that was a big fucking deal. Like her and like I never really got into her until very recently, but like Lord and Lana Del Rey.
Lana Del Rey, I fell in love with when she was still just putting out demos and EPs, like before she put out her first full length album.
Yeah, and
it was like because of that. It's because of that she had that like old school, like lounge, sultry thing that she was doing more so then than you know what.
Because like pop music in like the early 2010s was like loud and in your fucking face and like. I mean, like, shout out to Lady Gaga because she was the forefront of that for that 100% run. And then, like, it was like her and like Kesha and like Katy Perry. Like, it was like a party era. Rihanna.
Well, even like I was gonna say, like, yeah, even like Rihanna. Like, I used to like blast fucking Rated R all the time, like when that came out. Like,
nice.
So yeah, like It's funny because most people know me for like being
Rated R front to back.
It's funny because most people think like when they think of me as like the hardcore metal kid because that was like, you know, my main thing. And
you know more about Rihanna than I do at this point.
But it's like, but that's because I'm fucking old, dude. That's because like
you're only turning what 54 next year.
Yeah, shut the fuck up. No.
What?
No.
Just guessing.
No, God, no, not yet. Thank God, it's not that far yet. Jesus.
No.
Haven't even quite hit 40 yet, so I'm still good.
Period.
But I mean, what, 40 is the new 30 anyways, right? I mean.
Yeah. 40, 30 and thriving still works.
Yeah, I'll just keep telling myself that, right? For the next couple of years. Anyway, so yeah, but I remember like what got me starting to listen to pop music like more again, because when I was a kid, I was obviously exposed to it like in the 90s a bit, but then I kind of just went off and was like, I'm into like punk bands and metal bands and hardcore bands and like, and then by the time I was playing in this like deathcore band at the time, this was in like 2008, 2009, and which that was the thing then, like deathcore was like exploding at that point, you know?
Yeah. Didn't like Suicide Silence just release that?
Yeah, exactly. And like we were very much like our sound was like if you'd have taken like, you know, that era of Suicide Silence plus like the fucking Suicide Season era of like Bring Me the Horizon and like mushed them together, like with some other influences. That's kind of like how what we sounded like. But
love those songs.
Still great albums, but it was just like it became a fad like very quick.
Oh, definitely.
But so I was in a band that was doing that at the time, and I had been listening to heavy music and stuff for a long time. And yeah, I'd had some pop stuff here and there and some other genres mixed in, but like I just got so burnt out on heavy music at that point that I was like, I just need to listen to something else. So I remember I turned on the pop radio station, the local pop radio station at the time, and heard this song come on the radio, and I was like, right off the bat, before the vocals even started, I was like, oh, this is something different. And then I was like, okay. And then the vocals came in and I'm like, I like this. And then I immediately remember saying to my friend who was there, I was like, this person's got something here. And it was Just Dance by Lady Gaga. It was when that song had just
game changer.
Came out.
There is pop.
Yeah,
go for
dude.
It. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, when I heard that song, and I was like, I mean, of course, it was like, oh, wait, that's Akon. I can tell that right there. I know that.
Yeah.
But it was like, but besides, like me, like recognizing that part of it, I was like, there's something different about this. Like, yeah, this is very poppy, but there's this very synth driven. It's very like, I'm like, this is something like, and I remember telling my friend, I was like, something is going to come of this person, because she was just, I mean, this was literally like the first single that was like starting to explode.
And she hit the fucking ground running, basically.
Yeah, and it was, I mean, because this was before Poker Face, which was what really exploded. But like, but like Just Dance was like, I heard that and I was like, she's going to be somebody.
You were like, they're going to make a fucking video game series out of this.
Oh yeah, I was like, this is fucking, and then I, you know, sure enough, then it was like after that she drops Poker Face, and then it's like, okay, yeah, this is like, this is over. She is going to dominate.
It's like Applause, like then it's Judas. Well, Applause came after, but like, you know, then she released like The Fame and The Fame Monster. And,
well, then what made me fall in love with her too was, I think it's because creative types tend to be attracted to other creative types. Like if you can tell somebody who is a born artist and creative type versus somebody who's just like, you know, and I'm not putting it down, somebody who's like just a general musician. There are those who are like just general musicians who can play in anything, and there's nothing that like necessarily, they're not obsessed with being groundbreaking or being artistic or
and they have an audience for that.
Exactly. Like, and I'm not putting that down.
That in a demeaning way. No. Yeah. Because but like there are somebody people who like aren't really necessarily creatives. They just like they sing really fucking good.
Yeah.
And so they get people to write shit for them.
Exactly.
And that's their thing.
Yeah, but it was like one of those things where like with her, it was like right off the bat, it was obvious like she's a full creative type. Like it is.
Which, I mean, like I know Lady Gaga has had like stuff written for her too.
Oh, yes.
She's a pop artist.
Yes, but she is very much in control of her image, the artistic approach to it, the whole thing.
The eccentricity about it.
Yeah. She has always been in control of that. And it's like, you know, and some things have worked better than others throughout her career, but that's the way it is with anybody. But I also think that in some cases, like where something may have seemed like it somewhat flopped at the time, then ended up coming around and being better later. Because I remember like the whole art pop thing kind of didn't explode in the way that I think she thought it was going to.
It kind of like infamously like lightly flopped. And I say lightly because it's like,
I mean, it still was successful,
like,
but
the mainstream, it still was a success. But like for Gaga, it just wasn't.
Yeah, but even in that though, like I said,
it's like some of her best fucking songs.
Yeah, going back and you look back at it and you go like, how did this kind of flop? Like, how did that, like there's, and it's sometimes it's just like the timing. Like it comes out at a time where for some reason it just doesn't hit right. Like, and it may, I mean, God, look at it's, you know, all of these songs that have been having a comeback lately. I mean, for fuck's sake, you know, like you said, with the, like a lot of that like 80s like synthwave stuff, you know, we've been bringing back 80s artists have been making a comeback in the last few years, like because of that, because there's been this resurgence in that and this kind of nostalgia in that. And you know, I feel like it's funny, kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where it's like sometimes people will, you know, look back on something and be like, oh, maybe that wasn't as bad as I thought it was. Like, I mean, even I've been seeing it happen with the whole like nu metal thing. Like nu metal got shit on for so many years, and rightfully so in a lot of cases, because it became a fad thing and there were a lot of really shitty nu metal bands.
It just became it became kind of cringe. It was just more so the like,
but there were artists in it that were genuinely good, and there were artists in it that were like, they were the ones that kind of started the trend, and they were the ones that like it was kind of based around, and everybody else was just trying to kind of copy them. And when you go back now, and I hear like some of these, like I said, driving around with these college kids a lot, it's like it's funny hearing them talk about some of this stuff, you know, talking about some of these bands and things, and like this kind of resurgence of the nu metal thing. And I know diehard nu metal fans who are younger than me. Oh yeah, and it's like, and I like, for me, that was my scene. I was that kid at that age.
Wasn't my scene. I was like 6.
I was a teenager through it during that, so I was right at the demographic, like right in the slap dab in the middle of the age demographic of what that whole scene was. And so it's like, you know, I remember when it went from like people loving like Limp Bizkit with $3 bills when it came out in like 97, 98, and then Significant Other comes out and they've got all those big songs that came out of that, Nookie and all that shit, and make them huge. And then it was like right as that was starting to happen and into like Chocolate Starfish, people were like realizing like, oh, like all this fame and shit's really gone to Fred's head and he's kind of becoming a dick. And then it kind of tanked people's perception of the band because of that. And then there was the whole Ozfest 99 fiasco, which really didn't help them either. And
what happened with them?
They were the one that got blamed for the fucking riots and shit at Ozfest 99. Okay. Like I just know
there was like a lot of
I get it.
Put it lightly, drama.
I was gonna say, I forget you are a bit younger than me, so but yeah, it was a crazy thing. I mean, it was all over the news and shit. I remember it was a mess. I mean, there's a great documentary. I think it's on Netflix that you can watch that's about it that I would recommend watching. It's actually a really good documentary, but like
I do want to watch it.
It shows you like the way they put it out is like for those that are, you know, like younger, would they were like this was like the Fire Festival before the Fire Festival. Like this was like the Nightmare Festival that fucking, you know, collapsed, you know. It should have been much bigger and was huge, but then was ultimately a major disaster in the end, you know, literally with, you know, riots and fires and vandalism and rapes and all sorts of shit that happened. Right. It was like anarchy, but really, they were the band that got blamed for a lot of that because of their song Break Stuff and shit. And they were like, you know, they were just hyping up a crowd as any band does. Yeah. But when you've got a crowd of 180,000 people and you're telling them to break stuff, yeah. You know,
it's more about like the messaging you put out maybe like before, like, hey, this song's about breaking stuff, but like maybe don't like break someone's head in. And it was like if you're moshing, like pick your friend up if they fall.
And to me,
you know, I mean, we just had to experience it again with Travis Scott.
Oh God, so
like, you know, and that was tragic. Like we just don't need that to happen again.
Well, and I think that for the most part, most bands and performers are usually pretty observant of things like that and try to deal with it appropriately. You know, it's rare to have a situation where somebody gets hurt at a show and something isn't done about it right away. You know, like it does happen sometimes, especially in these big, huge shows where like, you know, the artist can't always see what's going on in the crowd. You know, and so you can't necessarily be held fully responsible for everything that the crowd is doing. Now, if you are saying or doing something that is inciting violence, that's a little different, you know. But if something just happens at a show, it's not. I mean, I don't know if you remember like the whole like Randy Blythe thing that happened when he was in
when he pushed someone.
Yeah, it was like in like was it the Czech Republic or something. Where
he went to prison for that.
Yeah, and all it was some kid got on the stage who wasn't supposed to be on the stage, and he just pushed him off into the crowd, not realizing that the kid ended up hitting his head, and then you know it caused and he ended up dying. And it was a tragic situation,
sad, man, because there's no bad person in that situation. There's just
it was a kid shouldn't have been on the stage. You know, and Randy did what he's done numerous times before in throwing people off the stage. And most of the time when that happens, the kids love it. They get caught by the crowd. They get crowd surfed out, whatever. It's not an issue. It was a freak occurrence to where this kid missed. And got,
like I said, like, it's,
you know,
I feel bad.
And I loved the fact, though, that he owned up to it. He's just like, yeah, I will face whatever consequences come to me for this, because in a sense, I am responsible because it was my band's show and I was the one who threw the kid off. So if need be, I will do the time, you know, I will do what I need to do for it. And a lot of other, you know, musicians and stuff would have been like, you know, fuck you. I'm just not coming back to that country. You could come get me if you want. Like, guess I'm never going back to the Czech Republic, you know, like, but he was just like, no, I turned myself in. I dealt with the consequences of it. But, and that was in a situation that wasn't even really fully his fault, you know,
that's someone's kid. I mean, it's just, I couldn't imagine like all the pain going through everybody in that situation, man. Like that must be awful.
Oh, I know. It's like, yeah, like get a chance, watch that Woodstock 99 documentary, because there's a lot of stuff. I mean, there were a couple of deaths that happened there too, and some a lot. It was wild, but like I got into that because I was talking about the whole nu metal thing, like with Limp Bizkit, and it was like they got so much shit from that and everything else that like they became the target of all of the jokes, all of the vitriol, all of the everybody was putting them down constantly, you know, after that. And anybody who was like a fan of their music was like ridiculed for it. And then, you know, a few years ago, like within the last couple of years, there's been a resurgence in this whole nu metal thing, and now like they're doing amazingly well. Like they just put out a new album like recently, which was the first new album that they'd put out with like the original lineup from like the 90s.
They did, yeah, I remember
and
that.
I actually like I listened through it and I was like, I actually am like, this is probably the best thing they've done since then. Like this.
And you know what? I love that for Limp Bizkit fans.
And you know, and it's like
truly and honestly.
And that's the thing. That's the way I am. It's like I never was a huge Limp Bizkit fan. But
I'm changing the lighting again in here. The sun's like, she was out and then she's not. Just trying to find a balance in here. It's a little better. It's a little better.
But like, I was never a huge fan, but I was definitely a fan, and they did have an influence on some of the things that I did, and like Wes Borland as a guitar player had a big influence on me, and like, although I think I liked the stuff he did later with like Blacklight Burns, his solo band. Like Blacklight Burns is amazing. I wish he would go back to doing that again. I mean, I'm glad he's back in Limp Bizkit. Like, he should be back in Limp Bizkit. In fact, his writing was what made Limp Bizkit Limp Bizkit. His guitar writing was what made them that sound. But like, if you ever get a chance, listen to Blacklight Burns, like his like solo band he did, and it was so good.
Send me the link.
Yeah, I'll send you a link to it. It's like, it's really good, and it's different. It's not new metal. It's not anything like that. It's kind of, God, I don't even know how to describe it. It's unique. I don't know. It's kind of got a little bit of that kind of like garage rock, indie rock, but also there's some electronic elements. There's like,
interesting. I guess I wouldn't have expected that.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And then him being the lead vocalist as well was different, because
also interesting.
Yeah, you're not used to hearing him as a vocalist, and his vocal style is like, I would put him like he was definitely influenced by like Danny Elfman, like when Danny Elfman was doing like Oingo Boingo in the 80s and shit. Like there's a little bit of like Danny Elfman's voice, or like obviously like everybody's seen like Nightmare Before Christmas, like that's Danny Elfman's voice doing all the singing for Jack in the movie. Like, so if you kind of imagine,
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's like
theatrical.
Yeah, the actual movie. It's like
I'm saying like his voice.
Yeah, it's kind of a theatrical voice. It's in tone wise, it's similar. It just reminds me of like Danny Elfman's voice a little bit. It's
interesting.
It's like kind of a similar tone. But he does a lot of weird stuff. But of course, Danny does weird shit too. But like, I will send you the link and you'll have to listen to it. But
I like a theatrical kind of like. I mean, it's like why I've always when we go back to like System of a Down, like they had very like dramatic theatrical style, like
100%. Well, that was one of those things with them where it was like, it was the make or break for a lot of people. Like you either loved them or hated them, a lot of times simply based on the vocals, because like the music was one of those things that most people could get along with just fine. It was like, can you handle the weird theatrical vocal style
inflections? Like he's about to go up like 3 octaves.
And what I love is the fact that like they brought in a lot of their like Armenian heritage and like traditional
and influence from the culture
very much
into like metal.
Exactly. And so a lot of that like vocal styling and even like a lot of the guitar playing and things was very much influenced by that, that history they have, that culture.
My favorite part about that band is that no one's ever gonna sound like that band ever again, and if they do, it's gonna sound like shit. B,
and everybody's gonna be like, "Oh, you're just ripping off." Yeah, you're just ripping off.
Yeah,
down.
It's great. It's they secured the most, like one of the most unique sounds they could ever secure. Like period.
Of course, they definitely did. It's just sad that they can't work their differences out enough to actually make another full-length album.
Yeah, but at this point, like the further we get away from the last album, the less I'm like eager to hear what they would produce. Like they came
out with a couple of new songs just last year.
Yeah, they did, and those were good. Those were cool. But like,
did you ever listen to like Scars on Broadway, Darren?
Yes, I did.
Scars on Broadway I thought was really good too. Like,
I love that first record. Joey loves that record. That's like one of his favorite.
I can see it because it's funny because I can tell with the way that Joey writes some of the albums that are big influences on.
Oh my God.
Like, yeah. Because I'm like, oh yeah, like I was influenced by a lot of those same albums. I hear it. I know where that comes from. I mean, I remember telling him that one of the first times that he and I ever talked, I remember telling him that. I was like, I can hear these bands. Like I listed off like 4 or 5 different bands. He's like, yep. Like, yep. We're
He's like, you caught me.
Yep. Kindred spirits here. We were influenced by a lot of the same bands.
Literally. Yeah.
But Man, it's oh shit, man. Like I can't believe we've already been talking for like an hour and 45 minutes.
Almost noon, isn't it? Yeah.
But it's one of those things where it's like I wish that like guys like you and Joe and everybody else, like there's several people that I wish like we physically lived closer, because I would just like have you on doing this kind of stuff all the time, because like yeah, people that I communicate with really well, like I would love to have
on. For sure. And I'm like trying to plan out like when I want to move to, because I want to move to Indianapolis next year. And that's only going to be, I mean, that's either
it's like an hour from us. It's like an hour.
Really?
It's like
is it closer?
It's like an hour and 15 minutes, hour and 10 minutes.
Oh, well, shit, never mind. We'll be closer.
Yeah, Indy, it takes us very little time to get to. It's because 65, like the interstate runs right to us. So like you jump on the interstate, you're doing like 80 all the way down there. And you get there in like an hour.
Indy's just kind of like, it's just like closer to a lot of other cities too.
Well, to be fair for Indiana, Indianapolis is really the only major. It's the only major city we have, and it's the only real, true like big major city. Big like
Fort Wayne's a city, and it's it's a cool city.
And Fort Wayne I think Fort Wayne's considered the second largest city in Indiana. So like,
no, it definitely is. Yeah.
So I mean, it's still big. Like
and I love this town for sure, but I think I feel like I would thrive in an environment where there's just a little more going on.
Indianapolis definitely, it's like it's the only city in Indiana that I feel like doesn't sleep. You know, it's like every state kind of has their own major city.
I have conversations nightly with like people where I'm like, where are like the nightclubs around here? I'm like, where's like a street? Like I love going out and dancing with my friends. Like where's like more than like one place in like downtown Fort Wayne where you can do that? And you really can't. It's kind of most things kind of close around like midnight around here. You'll have some bars that stay open till like 1 or 2. The only gay bar we have here after dark, they stay open till 3 a.m. So that's just where we go.
At least you have one. We don't have one anymore here.
Yeah.
Like
did Lafayette used to have one? We
had one at one point, but it didn't last very long. And like, unfortunately, I think it's kind of it's a sign of the area we live in, because whereas Lafayette is obviously I don't get like super political on this, but where Lafayette is kind of a blue island in the sea of red that is Indiana. Like
I mean, most like the bigger, I feel like the bigger your town or city is, the more like blue it just kind of gets. Like cities are just like that.
But Lafayette, though, because it is still pretty small, is still heavily influenced by that side of things. So it tends to still be quite conservative with a lot of stuff. And I know like there have been issues with, when they've, done like Outfest and stuff here and different things. It's like there have been some, there's been pushback and there's been issues with this and that. And it's like, and it's sad and it sucks. But like, I was literally just talking, I forget who it was I was talking to. I was just talking to somebody like within the last couple of days where we were talking about that, how there are no designated gay bars in Lafayette at all.
Yeah.
And
I just went to one in South Bend that was surprisingly, like, I mean, not that I'm like shitting on South Bend. It's just like, I know they were a smaller town. I didn't really like know what it was going to be like, but like, they just like, I guess they have this gay bar called R Bar, like letter R bar. And they had just like moved it to a different location around there in Mishawaka. And so it's like a pretty new-ish place again, just because they got a brand new everything. So I don't know what the place was like before, but this bar was amazing. Like I
just miss it because like we used to like I have a couple of friends who are like are in the drag scene and stuff, and I missed like going to those because that is some of the most fun I've ever had in my life was going to drag shows, and
they have them for every Friday and Saturday night here.
And like they used to happen more often here. And then like, there's been so much fucking pushback from the conservative scene in this area. And they've been struggling to try to find venues to keep doing them in because every time they go to do one somewhere, the place gets a whole bunch of shit for it, and then
That's a shame.
and it sucks because it's like Lafayette as a whole is pretty open-minded. Most people that are here are, but like the smaller minority of the more conservative right are being extremely loud and obnoxious. And
I mean, like it's kind of like, for some reason, drag queens all of a sudden, I feel like this year got put under a political spectrum for some reason, where like politicians were trying to ban drag shows,
and it doesn't make any sense. I'm like, do you realize that there are? I'm like, dude, do you realize that there are drag queens that are 100% straight, right? Like, there are.
No, there are.
Like, there are. Like, I know a couple of them. Like, it's like it happens. Like,
yeah. So I mean,
you can't, just because you think it's one way does not mean that it is always that way. And it's like, for the most part, my opinions and all this stuff for years have just come down to like, ask yourself this question: does it affect you? If it doesn't, shut your fucking mouth and go on with your life. Just leave it alone.
That's the thing. Like, they think it's gonna affect. They think it's gonna affect their children, and
the only thing that it could affect their children is in a positive way.
Is making them realize maybe they want to be a fucking drag queen. I don't know.
Yeah, like, I mean, or not feel
what's wrong with
shame?
Someone putting on a wig?
Who cares? Like,
it's an art form. It is a fucking art form, like, at all times. And I don't know. It's kind of crazy to me.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, obviously stupid for us, but like, you gotta like have conversations with people who may just be ignorant to that. And, it's more so about understanding why they think that way. You may look at a full grown ass adult from, wherever you're standing, and they say all this hateful shit. And it's easy to just say like, well, they're old, they should already fucking understand that. But that's wrong. But like, the harsh truth about it all is that they've been indoctrinated into those beliefs their entire life. Mm-hmm. And it's like the older they get, the more just like ingrained into and etched like into their fucking concrete head it is. So like, I mean, it's just about starting a conversation.
I think that's why there is so much of a panic right now from that crowd, is because
it's like satanic panic with drag queens, which is hilarious.
They are, because they are dying off. Like, they're getting older and disappearing, and there aren't as many people that have that view of things anymore. And so that group is panicking and like realizing that inevitably, they're gonna lose control. And it's like, but then at that point, it's like, why then are you still continuously fighting so hard for it? It's like, you're allowed to have your own beliefs. You're allowed to have.
You're gonna die soon. I don't know.
It's like what happened. I made a TikTok way back when the whole Roe v. Wade thing happened, and I was talking about how it's like I got into a discussion with somebody who like on the opposite side of things, where he made the comment of like, well, your rights end where mine begins, and I was just like, the irony that you are trying to use that against me. When it's like, do you hear what the fuck you just said? Like, you literally just said the exact same thing that I am saying from the other side. It's like, how are you trying to use that as an argument against me? Like, that's just dumb. Like,
and these aren't even about your rights. These are about the rights of
others
having control over their own bodies.
It's like, like I said, does it affect you? Are you capable of carrying a child? Are you capable? Like, if the answer to all of those is no, then you really have no say. Like, it doesn't affect you. So,
I mean, if it were men who got pregnant, abortion would be legal so fast. Like 100%.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's the world we live in, man. Luckily though, look at it this way though. Yeah. We're lucky enough that we're going to outlive a lot of those motherfuckers. So it's good.
We will. Or maybe the sun will kill us all before then. And you know what? It's been a good run, America. So if that's the case, I've kind of like, I don't know. I've come to the, like, I used to be scared of the world ending. Like when like 2012 happened and that movie came out and like it was the Mayan calendar. I was like, oh, fuck. I'm in middle school. I'm not ready for this. And now I'm just like, you know what? If it was meant to be, it was meant to be. Like,
It's like anybody who's ever had a near-death
experience. All gonna go at the same time. It's gonna be quick.
It's like if you've ever had a near-death experience, like you kind of come to that realization of like, because in the moment, like that whole thing of like, oh, your life flashes before your eyes. It's like, yeah, there is a certain amount of truth to that, in that like you kind of reflect on everything. And at least for me, in the couple of times I've had some very close calls to stuff, I have come away from it going like, you know, in the moment, I just accepted it. It was like, it is what it is. Like, I have no control over it. It just is what it is. And I think the goal is to live your whole life like that. It just is what it is. Don't worry so much about it. Like, it's going to happen eventually, you know. And I'm saying,
at a point, go for it.
I was going to say, I'm saying as somebody who is definitely having issues with his own mortality and shit, which is part of just because I'm getting old and realizing it more. But like, you know, it is, you know, for me in particular, it's like, you know, learning to accept it more and just being like, yeah, I mean, it is what it is. And yes, I do accept it. The only thing for me is just like, it sucks because it's like, there's so many things I wanted to get done, so many things I want to accomplish, so many things that you know.
Yeah, they're like,
it's like you then start realizing, well, now you're going to have to just start realizing that a lot of that stuff's not going to happen. So let's focus on the things that are the most important out of those to try to get done.
That's kind of the thing, is like, there are always things that I want to do in my life that I haven't accomplished yet. But then there are the things that I have done in the now, and there are, you know, memories and friendships that I've made that'll last a lifetime anyway. And so I think about that. And in that sense, if I, for some reason, a bus came and crashed through the house right now and just ran me the fuck over, killed me, dead, gone, bye, then I would be happy with the life I've lived. You know, do I want to fucking die right now? No, I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying that, like, you know,
I think for me,
the bus attacked me in my own house and killed me, then yes.
The hardest part for me, I think, is like being a parent, because for me, it's like, I think more about, like, when I think about not being here at some point, it's less about me so much as it is like thinking about my kids. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Wanting to, like, I wish I could still just be here for you forever. Like that kind of thing. Like, that's, you know, I realize there's going to come a time where I'm not going to be able to. And there's always that chance that I may, you know, I could die in the next, you know, I mean, I could get hit by a car later today. Who knows? Like, in which case I would never even see my kids grow up or anything. And that would suck. And I think for me, that's the stuff that I think gets me more than anything else, is like, those are the things that are more important to me than even my own ambitions with stuff. Is that. But, you know, it's just, you know, it's part of getting older. I think we all go through it. We all start reflecting on that. But
we probably avoid death in little ways every day that we don't even realize.
Oh God, yeah. I saw somebody did something about that. There's a scientist that like did a study of like, you know, if the average person only knew how close they came to death every day, like nobody would ever want to leave their house. We all barely avoid death on a daily basis.
I've seen Final Destination. I know what you're talking about.
Oh. Well, man, I should probably wrap this up. We've been going for almost 2 hours, and
I was going to say this went by really quick.
I know. Well, like I said, it's like I wish you were closer, because we could just do this kind of stuff more often. And I guess we have technology. I could always, like, you know, do this with you more often.
Let's do it every day.
Well, fuck. I mean, I don't think we'd be able to pull that off every day, but
no.
But I can have you come back, and I will have you come back.
Of course.
And of course, you and I are going to be still in touch outside of the podcast and shit anyways. Like,
absolutely.
Like we have been for years now, but
yeah, of course.
I'm just glad that I got a chance to have you come on and, you know, talk a bit. And
Me too.
You know, maybe we didn't talk a ton about your music stuff, but you know, it is what it is. Like,
there's nothing really to talk about. Stream Can I Rest. I released it. It was supposed to have a music video, but for complications, it doesn't. So maybe it'll have one in the future. Maybe I'll make one. Maybe I'll just move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, fucking TikTok. Don't add me on Snapchat. Yeah, just Adam, Araque. It's a one-of-a-kind last name. If you find someone else with that name and the picture isn't this face, then it's not me. It's an impersonator, not a real human.
Well, that's probably like one of the best sign-offs we've had so far. Like
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, dude, like I've told you before, I love you, and I'm glad that we all became friends and like got to, do all this stuff together. And it's like
Me too.
I'm so proud of like seeing where you've gone and what you're doing with your life and everything. And
Thank you so much. I'm happy you have this podcast back up.
It's something that I'm actually finding that I definitely missed doing, like just talking to people. And I mean, like I said, I do this stuff with people anyways, but it's nice to be able to do this in a way that I can kind of capture it, and may live on forever in,
of course,
the internet.
I can't wait to listen to it
or watch it or whatever the case is going to be.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, man. Well, thanks for coming on, and I'll let you know when this is all going to be coming up and stuff, so you can watch it when you want to and everything. But
thanks for having me.
Let me know when you are, got more free time and want to come down, because, dude, there's so much stuff we could do with you being here. There's sessions we could do. I could get you. There's places. Show. Oh yeah, there's places we could get you on to play shows. Like there's there's a lot of stuff. So
absolutely.
All right, man. Well, thanks again, and you
keep in touch.
Yes, you enjoy the rest of your day, my man.
Thanks, you too, Zach.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
It's getting late. We're losing the sunlight. These are the days we're supposed to spend outside. I wanna wake and not waste all of my time. But I did nothing today. Can I rest for a while?
Once again, I want to thank Adam for coming on. It was a great conversation. It was fun having him on. I'm definitely going to make sure I get him back on again. We're definitely going to try to get him in to do some session work too, at some point in the future. And for those of you that are like in our area, I'm definitely going to be trying to bring him down to this area to play some shows within, next few months, next year for sure at some point. But Adam, thank you again for coming on. You're a great friend, and you're fun to hang out with, and great to have on the show. And can't wait to see you again next time. And thank you guys, all of you, for all the support you've given us. And we'll see you next time.